is holding a number of users, the land users. For example, in the village areas, there are agricultural activities going on, pastoralism is going on, hunter-gatherers are there. So UCRT is just there to try to keep the voice of these pastoralists heard. Otherwise, if there is nobody holding them hand, they can end up being engulfed by the giants. Those are the conservation, including those international non-government organizations who are there, who have mass of money. They can speak the government, and the community feel their land is endangered. Any time can be taken away. So the role of UCRT. Okay, take me to another slide, please. Why this Ujamaa model came in place, or what is the reason why we found ourselves registered in the country? There's a number of issues which made UCRT to come in place to try find the solution for it. One of it is land and natural resource use conflict. We have a conflict between pastoralist, conservation, investors, and other people. So the resolution UCRT is thinking, if we come and try to put in place, is securing tenure. So one of the challenges is that one, and the other challenge which is facing this rangelands or this landscape is recurrent drought and climate shock. This one, the recurrent drought together with climate impact, reducing tremendously the pasture, which is also leading to decrease in the number of livestock. Take me back, please. No, the previous slide, yeah. The other thing is decreasing livelihood resilience, particularly for women and youth. We know these people, they in the pastoral communities or in these other communities I mentioned, they possess nothing. Okay, so they are the one to be very much impacted if the climate change is there. But another challenge, big challenge, is massive spread of invasive species. This picture tells us a lot of consequences coming from this problem, and also can express what is going on in that landscape. There is agriculture, as you see a tractor there. Conflict is emerging, loss of livestock is there, expansion of farms also disturbing the landscape. Go another slide. So specifically this map is here trying to show by evidence how the Hadza community have been affected by their land being taken away by other land users. Before UCRT intervened here, or many years ago, the dotted line here, the entire place here, used to be a Hadza land. But now when UCRT come in place, they only found the land for these people remain this size. Okay? Now about 80% of their land has been taken away, not by conservation, but by other strong communities. So UCRT came in place trying to secure also the small piece of land remaining for these people, for them to have at least a forest to call their home, and at least can other economic activities which are friendly to environment can be taken place here, so that to keep them alive and keeping them having at least a piece of land to live. Another slide. So the approaches of UCRT: we secure communal land, we strengthen governance, and we support community to improve livelihood. What do we talk about? You are going so fast. When we talk about securing communal land, it's very necessary, because if at least the land they live, there's no modern houses, so everybody, especially based on the Tanzania policy of land, everyone can see that land is vacant, can be occupied by anyone. So at least by securing through giving them titles, at least they can call their land. But again, there is the movement we call livestock mobility. They used to be in place many years, and it's a traditional form of them coping with difficulties. If you secure at least the communal land, at least you can allow them to keep moving their livestock, and they allow the nature to regenerate. When they come back, at least pasture can be there and water can be there. But now, if there is no any security of that tenure can go away, we can find themselves, livestock are limited to move, and at least the Maasai cannot, or the other livestock keepers cannot be resilient to impact of climate. When we talk about strengthened governance, we are targeting villages. These are the legal entities. As per Tanzania land, 70% of land is available in villages, and it is at least in the hand of the village council. The village council have mandate to oversee the entire village land. So they need to be capacitated in terms of governance. They need to understand how they can at least protect the land for their people. So the governance is done. Maybe we are strengthening the village council itself, but they have other governance structures, especially the structures that govern natural resources. We will see later on down there. But again, what we realize, these communities, like women and young people who are possessing nothing, at least there are some support. We are supporting them through programs that are environmental friendly, like providing beehives and establishing the so-called CMGs, community micro finances for women, at least to boost their income and them to realize like they are the part of the community. Another slide. More slide. Okay, so we are trying to comply. There are legal framework that we use at least to secure the tenure security. These are the acts UCRT rely to arrive at securing a communal land. Another slide. So the Ujamaa model for communal land tenure and coexistence. First, you have to understand the landscape and the existing livelihood. The second one, you do resolve boundary conflicts among the villages, because you cannot secure a village land certificate and at least reach a CCRO without resolving the conflict around the villages. If the village receives some fund to secure their tenure, they have to resurvey the boundaries involving the neighbors. The other thing is secure land tenure. These are the procedures. And the other thing in the model is governance and management and improving community livelihood. I think I spoken later. Okay, go on. These are just the procedure on how to arrive to a secure tenure security. The procedure number one is securing communal land right. Conflict resolution come in the first, secure certificate for village land, undertake participatory village land use planning, and formulate village bylaws for enforcement of the plans. These are the examples of the entire process. Okay, another slide. It's just a continuation. This is the CCRO, how you can now secure a CCRO. These are the steps of getting it. Until the issuing. This was I think the fourth president of Tanzania was issuing a CCRO. And after securing that area, you have to do some demarcation. And this is an example of a certificate of customary right of occupancy. Okay. Another step of acquiring it. I don't bother to read all for you. Yeah. Governance. So the term of governance, you might find in the village before we intervene, there's only a village council with some small committees, particularly environmental committee. But during strengthening, they also need to establish some other committees, like grazing committees at the village level, cross-village grazing committee, traditional leader system, village land use management plan committee, cross-border village grazing agreement, we call it MOU, to allow the free movement of livestock from one village to another. And the interesting thing is, when they plan their villages, you find the grazing areas are connected automatically. And they have something called in Maa Engutu. If you don't protect your grazing land, and now maybe you turn it into agriculture, you will be in a position of not allowed you to graze your livestock during the time of difficulty. So this one alone help every village to be very faithful and try to protect those areas. But also we work with district council closely, especially from the Department of Livestock. So they also consult this. The village committees all consult the district committee. But ultimately, there is another approach: improved grazing management and planned rest periods. As you see, it is only not enough to secure a village land use plan, because you can secure a village land use plan and you have a land for grazing, but it's very much degraded. A lot of work needs to be done. That's why we come up with the improved grazing management and planned rest periods. At least to have a better plans, like for example here, they do even monitoring on their field. They subdivide the grazing land into small blocks based on traditionally. We don't use pure science here to allow flexibility, because the plants are driven very much by weather, and we give them a room because they know, they understand. Even before science, they used to practice there. So at least what we added is to capacitate them and to tell them at least to respect calendars of grazing. The more they respect calendars of grazing, they realize they have enough pasture throughout the year, especially if the year was good in terms of rain. So at least it reduces the scarcity of pasture. Yeah. And MOU, these are to allow the free movement. They also need to come up, nearby villages to come up and agree. So when you are about to move to another village, at least you send a team of your people there. They take the information why you are coming, and then the village that you are moving to, they give you the proper way of sharing the resources together. You don't have to go the area you want to go yourself. They'll be telling you, okay, we are there, so we will graze together here. But also they'll be monitoring the number of livestock coming, but also they'll ensure themselves, like if you get rain, you go back safely. You don't remain and add any population to a village. Okay. So these are just an examples of how this grazing committee works. How do they manage this area here? This is the northern part of this is the Longido district, and Monduli are here. So the gray color that depict the connectivity, the grazing area. So everybody has a responsibility of making sure he protect his grazing area so that he can be welcomed the other day when there's a difficult time come. Go on. Another one. So in terms of supporting community livelihood, we just take an example from Lake Eyasi. Though we are supporting livelihood in different areas that we work, but we just pick the one as an example. Up to now, over 2 million CCROs. When we say CCROs, these are the common land shared by every pastoralist have been secured. But at least we helped the Hadza community, because they are in a tourism circuit, to secure their community tour guide association so that they can secure more fund. We also supported them to develop a tourism management plan and the code of conduct, like there. Yeah, it tell the do and don't do's when you go to that very community, and at least the fund, it can go there and they have authority over their area. These are just landscape of the Hadza community. This is that small piece of land that we secured. Now, after secured, you can see how now the landscape is good. This is Simanjiro. Okay, another. These are just data. So overall achievement, this a number of land use plan, number of villages up to now, CCROs, the holistic grazing plans, and this is the Women Right and Leadership Forum, because we also have and the benefit bylaws and MOUs. Last. Thank you. This means thank you in Ma. Asante sana.
Asante sana Liza. Ashenale. By the way, I identify myself with this group. You didn't know. But we come from the north. Of course, when we have our internal differences. These guys remained purely pastoralists, and my group went to do some farming along the slopes of Mount Meru. So we were called Wameru. So the Wameru are those people of the Meru mountain, and the Wamasai are those who have remained with no farming business. And because there's always a conflict between farming and grazing, then we have such internal not conflicts, but we know how to manage them, but we are the same. Karibu Saitoti.
Good morning. Habari za asubuhi. Andasuba pagi. When I say andasuba pagi, you say epa. Greetings in Maasai. Yeah. So Saitoti Paramelo. Yes, Professor No say sort of a researcher for a couple of years now. But my profession is more a legal scholar, so I'm a lawyer by profession. But I found myself in this research area because of the nature of the issues that we are going through. So can we go to the first slide? Yeah, so this is me. And I work for a pastoralist indigenous non-governmental organization, which is called Pingos Forum. It is an umbrella organization based in Arusha. And we have over 53 active members, UCRT being one of them. And also a founder of Indigenous Center for Innovative Research Alliance. Just after realizing that I'm also becoming a researcher, then I thought I should have another hand. So on legal matters, I work with Pingos Forum, but on issues related to cultural heritage and land security, of course, it's more of research basis. So I'm a pastoralist actually from with pastoral communities we have sections as well. We have Puruko, we have Loita, we have Kisongo, and then we have Laitayok. But we are all named as Maasai, and we live in the same livelihood system. So we don't really differ in terms of livelihood. And we are all attached to land and natural resources. That without land, then we are nothing, right? Because the cows that we have depends on environment, depends on land. So just to go quickly, my home place is called Laborsiret, which is in Simanjiro district, now southern part of Arusha, and it borders Tarangire National Park. And with Tarangire National Park, it's just like any other national park or protected area. We are highly restricted to get into it, whether by grazing or by doing any sort of human activities. So same challenges that Ngorongoro are facing are more or less the same. The only difference is that Ngorongoro is a multiple land use, which is its uniqueness as a World Heritage Site. So initially back, the first slide, back 1970s, the first slide, back 1970s, it was when then Tarangire National Park was publicized as a protected area. And before that time, pastoral communities were living in Tarangire National Park, including my family. So when we were evicted from Tarangire National Park, we had to pave way for the new Tarangire National Park now, which is a protected area. And because it is fully restricting human activities, then we had to move. But come later, we were thinking about how then can we access the water sources that we have in, because we have some areas like Isilalo area where it is important for the seasonal grazing calendar, especially during the dry seasons, because it is a water source. We have black soil, which is important for salty licks for our livestock. So how can we access? Then the restrictions become operational. We were not allowed again to get into it. So we had to cut off our relationship with the environment, which is now designated as protected area. Now, from that perspective now, indigenous communities, these are the pastoral communities, had to run away from the Tarangire National Park and just living along the borders. We call adjacent to the protected area, which is Tarangire National Park. So there was this kind of cutoff of the relationship between Tarangire, which is the geographical area, and the livelihood system of this community. Go to the next slide. But in the course of struggling for the rights of surviving, that's what I can say in a simple way, we had to think beyond conservation initiative, saying now we have to think another alternative of looking forward, how can we fight against this kind of brutal actions that is being applied to the community, moving us from our ancestral land, moving us from where we have been living for decades. How can we do this? Then we employed in legal issues. That is to say, we struggled to learn legal approaches to fight against the rights that has been denied in the previous case. So, with the second slide, there is an author called Metanei Oledavash from Kenya and Mary Pole. They have been thinking about how indigenous peoples describes collective identity and, of course, the issue of land accountability. What is the relationship? So, indigenous describes collective identity impressed by thousands of unique communities across the globe, not only the Maasai community, but with other ethnic groups. As Supok mentioned, we have a number of indigenous communities as described by the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples criteria, saying we have the Hadza living in the Elekeasi, we have the Akie community in Kiteto, southern part of Arusha, the Maasai, the Barbaig, the Datoga, as Sule mentioned yesterday. So their cultures are structured and around accountability specific on communal headland. Asante sana. So, this social responsibility actually bring us to the knowledge of living as ancestors. Because living as ancestors means that you operationalize or you inherit the daily cultural practices that the community is undergoing. And living as ancestors, what I mean in this slide is continuing to work from where the ancestors. He talks about continuance, that he refers to the endurance of indigenous peoples through practices that sustain intergenerational relationship, reciprocity with land, community, and other than human life. Yesterday, I spoke about the relationship between Maasai and the wildlife, and I said for decades Maasai community has been living with the wildlife with no any kind of conflict. And if you go further, the Maasai community within their clans, again, there are animals, wildlife animals, that bears the names of the clans in the Maasai. Kokel, I think, can remember some of the wildlife like zebra. They have their clan name in the Maasai community. Reptiles, not amphibious, they have also the relationship. So they have this kind of relationship in a way that they treat wildlife as human. They treat wildlife as their fellows because they are creatures created by God and being found on the earth. So there has never been any sort of a conflicting between the wildlife and, of course, the communities living in. This is where the reciprocal responsibility is coming in terms of wildlife and human. Because when, for example, there's a fight between an elephant and a lion or predator, they normally run to the boma. Yeah, they just come in and live together with our cows. Then early in the morning they depart to the wilderness. It is just because they know that their security is on the hands of this community, and we never fight them. So this kind of a relationship enhances the accountability of both animals, of course, and the people themselves, which are the indigenous communities. Can you go to the third slide? Yeah, while it's going for the third slide, yes. So you see these pictures. These pictures are different, but they are very meaningful. World Springs of Collective Continuance, we have something called Ankang. And Ankang is a living compound. And again, we have droughts here below. Then sacred sites and ceremonial grounds. When we talk of Ankang, this is the area. It is a home, residential home for the pastoral communities. It is always round, and that's why it's called Ankang. And it has cultural significance of being it round. Not just a shape, but it has the meaning. When you get into that area, there are only two doors, in and out. And they have the meaning, left and right. So this kind of cultural significance forms what is called Ankang. And when you look far, there's a mountain there. That is called the Oldonyelengai. And Oldonyelengai is a mountain of God. And it is a mountain of God that we believe that when you go there, when you have a problem, especially for the barren women, when you get there and pray, there is a belief from the community that you will conceive. And the lava that comes in is a sign that this is active and God is therein. So he's always listening to us. That's why we call it Oldonyelengai. It's a mountain of God. So you see, the boma and the sacred site, they're very important, and they don't really visit often. No, they go in special circumstances. But when you come to my right, it is called Endonya or Morwak. Endonya or Morwak is a hill named after the elders. When you say Ormoro is an elder, and for the Maasai community, of course, they have age groups that start from 18 and above, but from 35, 45, 40s and above, we call them elders as well, but depends on the age group that you are in. So from this area, it's where the new age group starts. When my age group retires, then we go to this area which is called Endonyor Morak, where the name of the new age group starts. And of course, the cultural taboos and the practices starts from here. It is such a very big area, not actually a hill by itself, but it's so big. Because when you go there, there are a lot of ceremonial practices that are going to be done. But when you look down here, this is the area that I was mentioning. It is in Tarangire National Park. This area is called Silalo. It's a swamp which used to be dry seasonal grazing area for the communities back before designation of the national park in 1970s. So before 1970s, we were here. We were living here. And in every season calendar, all the Maasai come and constructed their houses here. When I say seasonal calendar, we have dry season and rain seasons. And during the rain season, cows normally move, because Maasai people are nomadic. They normally move far where there are sources of water for them to be able to graze and leave another area to rejuvenate. So this Silalo was then taken when designed Tarangire National Park. And then no connection anymore. There are sacred sites in here. There were some very important traditional medicinal plants here. There were some areas where the services, like when you go to service a car, you buy a couple of oils, engine and whatever, right? So we have other areas, special areas where you can service your body. They are called Europul or Ripuli here. You cannot access anymore. So you see, this kind of designation has created a lot of restrictions towards the community, and that the community cannot easily access its services because it is now a national park. Yeah, exactly. Go to the next slide. So you see, before it was made reserves, we were here. So we have all the areas bordering Kenya, but with the picture, this was a Maasai district. And when colonialists left, they say Maasai Reserve. All this area from Mondole, from Ngorongoro crater is now here. But, sorry. Yes. But when they started now to reserve, what really happened is that we haven't seen here. You cannot access anymore as Maasai Reserve. Okay? And then we have a newly animal called Pololet. Pololet is a new game reserve. Recently it's called game reserve, but it used to be Loliondo. which is a village land, but now it is called Pololet Game Control Area. Just like 4 months ago, it has been announced as a game reserve, so no restrictions as well. When you go to Oleondo, it is a game control area as well, which is by law. When you read the Wildlife Conservation Act of 2009, any game control area, no human activity is allowed. So it means, despite the fact that it is a village land, but no human settlement is allowed therein. So you see, so all the area is now covered. And when it is covered, it means that the indigenous communities cannot be able to access anything out of there, because it is now conditional. And whenever you want to get there, you need a permit. So these are the strategies that we thought would have been very helpful. A double strategy for land accountability and collective continuance. We need rematriation. It's very, very important to fertilize sustaining relationships between Ngai, Ngishui. Yeah. When I say Ngai is God, but when I say Ngishui is breathing. Yeah. A breathing world or life world that provides us support for survival. Reparation, as I said, that when do we really being paid our debts? When are we refunded back our debts? So restoring connections between people and the ancestral homelands. Because when we say ancestral homelands, of course, the areas that we are practicing. Key example of the practice: protecting and revitalizing sacred sites. As I said, we have Odonyo Lengai, we have Ndonyoro Morwa, we have Mukulat. There are so many. So we need to protect them so that can be able to support their livelihood. Documentation and curing of the Maasai heritage thoughts and practices is very important, because we have working encyclopedias, dictionaries, but they are not documented anywhere. We have no archives where this knowledge is found whenever they get away. Environmental knowledge and stewardship, it's very, very important, because we have a practice in Maasai which is burning fire, which we think it is an important practice because it kills a lot of other unnecessary vegetation covers on the ground, but also reduces diseases. Nowadays, even the conservation community has taken that, but they call it what? Fire break. That's the name we are giving, but this is what we are. We have it in Maasai. So intergenerational knowledge sharing is very important, and relationship building to continue so that we enhance the ecosystem. Colonial legacies is a challenging thing, community land rights, customary tenure, and so forth. It's very, very important that we come all together. That's the slide. Last slide. Yeah, I did some of the researches with UVA, Mapping Indigenous World, of course with the LAT, but also British Academy Sustainable Development Program on Cultural Heritage, Dignity and Sustainable Development. Thank you. Assuring.
Thank you very much, Saitoti and Liza. I'm not sure when we put Ole before your names, but Ole, Liza,
Yeah.
Ole, Saitoti. But colleagues, this is now open for discussion, questions, comments, and really thinking about all the issues we talked from yesterday, and now connecting with practice, connecting with communities that are working on the ground, and just reflecting on how much conservation has gone, so expansive, securing land for wildlife, while also, putting local communities in pressure. Welcome for questions. Can I see hands? I see one at the back. I see two here. Okay, many now. So we start. Can I start from behind? The corner comes to Dr. Mkono, comes to Edith and Melubo. Then it will come to Jim, and then that will be the first round. We can always have another round. Karibu.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm in a learning phase. I'm a Maasai by naturalization and a Sukuma by birth. If we say that, I don't understand.
Yeah.
And trying to connect the two presentations, I think I would be very happy to hear what does it mean to a Maasai person or a pastoral community when we say security of tenure. Is a certificate. Oh, I hope it's safe. Is a certificate enough? And is it security against who? Is it against your fellow member or against the state? If I read some works of Professor Shivji and Dr. Kapinga some years ago, seems a paper is not a security. It's a security against your neighbor, but it's not a security against the state. And this is evident, for example, if I read the case of Ndaramia, for example, very recent case, where the minister undertook a process of, when Saitoti was mentioning the Kororate game reserve, the court was in agreement that the procedures were not followed. But because the procedure has gone too far, the court has nothing to do. So I want to hear from you, what does it mean when we say security of tenure for a pastoral community? And just for a matter of information, when Supoko was saying 70% of the land is in the village, and these are government records. If you read the National Land Policy launched last year, the village land is now 50%. And that is by the government report. If you go to the other reports which are not recognized by the law, it's even below that. Thank you.
Yes, my name is Mkono. The two presentation was quite interesting, but drawing from the first presentation, where you try to experiment what you call ujamaa. So my concern was how does your ujamaa making of environmental subject from because it seems, in my view, it is a more of a top-bottom approach, which is quite contrary from the second presentation, where community members drives within their same logic, their same understanding, and how they interact with nature. So where does the notion of sustainability becomes possible after the project? Because it seems it is imposed from outside, and also it seems more regulatory, because you tend to discipline those communities to comply of what you are trying to think as a new model of ujamaa, which is quite contrary to issue of reciprocity, the concept of Ubuntu, relational kind of, which we had in the second presentation. But again, reading and listening from what you have presented, the survival of these communities and other communities becomes quite crucial. So can we think about survival environmentalism as a new concept, where this community try to use their agents in order maybe to counter the imposition of these new models, which I suggested yesterday, conservation by alienation, just to borrow Mano's concept. So I think that should be quite debatable, but we need to push and to reclaim and to learn from the second presentation and how can we document, but not only document, how do these values, norms, and practice become embodied so that we can think of African environmentalism that has been the topic since yesterday. That's my observation.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mkono. To Edith, please.
Many thanks, Supuko and Paulette, for good presentations. And mine are just connected with the former two people that asked the question. And the way I look at your presentation is that, especially the first presentation, is that the approach that you're taking towards securing the master land is more legal, which is some good approach. But then the way I see it, to whom do you secure that land? Is it for the person? But now, because there's so much overlapping interest over the master land, so the very common, the collective land that you are trying to secure for the pastoralists are also of interest. For example, all over the master land is almost the carbon, the carbon area or the carbon reserve, if I could say. So how do you kind of strike a balance, or how do you make people aware of those? Because you have to sign, for example, 30 years contracts, and then we don't know we are not sure about what is the future holds. People kind of abide to what they want as far as their livelihood is concerned. But then back to your approach of Ujamaa, my question is that how do you link up with the master traditional system which is existing, the Ilegwana County? How do you link it? Because I see it's like you're kind of running away from it. So is there a way that you're reconnecting with it? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Edith. I think you're putting your PhD here now. Edith is doing her PhD and we can clearly hear it. Melubo, but just a few words. I also had a question about land use plans. I have also written about how land use plans are also a tool for expansion of protected areas. And I can see that you have put also some, efforts on that. How safe are we with land use plans?
Yes, thank you. My name is Melubo. One, I may have not said anything when Shango was leading up the discussion, but just to say, being a Maasai and coming from Ngorongoro is by itself is being victimized quite. I am a scholar, a professor at this level. I went through much just because of being a Maasai and coming from Ngorongoro. I have quite a lot of story to share on our private talk. But again, a little bit of decolonizing naming. Yeah, we unfortunately we have pity quite of the foreign naming of our places and even our naming of our own. I would possibly love to say Olonyo Lankai should be called Olonyo Sera Lankai. That's the name that the Maasai would love it to be called. Serengeti was, of course, is Serengeti. You have corrupted it to call it so. Korongoro has never been Ngorongoro, but I understand now you have also corrupted it. Tarangire was Tara Enkine, the god, the spotted goat. Although Pai isn't. Although Vai, there's no V. And in Maasai vernacular, Maasai word, there's no V. Any true Maasai suffers from V and Z. So I cannot say, for example, Tanzania. Maasai will say Tanzania. Samani. That's Bimi. Yeah. Just like other communities suffer from L and R, right? Yes, the same appears to like you greet a Maasai mama by saying mama yeyo. It's like saying mama. So it's senseless. It makes no sense. But I must admit, my brothers Supuk and Saitoti, presentation is of importance to us. I possibly think if there are no such agencies or institutions like USRT, PWC, Pingos that are speaking for the Maasai, the little land that is left could have gone for good. So we truly appreciate the existence of such institutions. There has been a voice speaking about. You have seen how much we have lost as a community. Quite, but without them, maybe much of it could have just gone. So truly appreciate. But I possibly have two questions for them. One is, I understand how the government feels about NGOs, and especially those working in northern part of Tanzania, Ngorongoro in particular. How has USRT navigated all these wars against the government? How do you go about lobbying and just being existing, but again keep doing what you believe is true to your values and mission? But also a question connected with the invasive plant species. It is a concern, critical one. If you get down the Ngorongoro Conservation Area, the crater where we call it an iconic tourism attraction, true. But almost 80% of the space of the floor is gone. There are no animals because much of the plant that grows are toxic. They are unpalatable and unedible by wildlife. But what approach do you believe to be right in trying to address the invasive plant species, plant in particular, because I understand USRT and sometimes Pingos does this or that. So could you please share with us how you have been navigating the invasive, which approach, which model works better in a Maasai-led setup? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Samuel. Can we have brief questions? Come to Jim. This Jim. Then I will allow the presenters to respond to the questions, and then we come for another quick round of questions.
Thank you very much, Chair, and the presenters. I'm called Jim from Makerere University, from the Tourism Department. I have a presentation in the afternoon about what we call Afro-positive tourism. I won't go into those details, but I just want to know, and I pick up from what he was mentioning, to what extent are your organizations using tourism as a tool to reclaim your voice? Because there's misrepresentation. For example, you're talking about the naming. How many tourists come to Tanzania and go back knowing the meaning of Ngorongoro? How many tourists come to Tanzania and know that the Maasai are conservationists? They are not natives. They are not uncivilized people in the corner of the world doing. Because I think the representation you have made, you actually show us that actually the Maasai. Somebody talk that it's not science, but that's the science. The Maasai, the science maybe began with the Maasai before it was written in the journals. I'll talk more about, but I just wanted to know to what extent are you using tourism as a tool to actually empower the community and to recover that voice that we're saying has been lost. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Saitoti and Supuk, please respond to the questions briefly, and we come back for another round before we close the session. Sante.
Thank you for your comments and of course questions. Question number one is about what does it mean by land security, or what do you mean by security of tenure? Yes, this is a very technical question because Pingos has been contesting in different courts of different jurisdictions, trying to bring a question of whose right to land. And of course, the case of Ndalamia that you have mentioned is a very recent case, just being one of them. Because you remember, before that, there was a case to deregister all the villages in NCA. And of course, the main reason was to reallocate, or rather remove, or rather ban human settlement within NCA. And we were successful to take before the court of law. And of course, you got the ruling that the villages should be restored. Not actually, the gazette that has been given was not collaborative enough, or did not meet legal standards. But why are we securing this land? We are using different approaches actually. One being taking cases before the court of law, trying to get legal point of view on how to own land. Of course, using our own legislative processes. But I admit that we have a lot of challenges, especially on our legal framework. That gives you a right at this end, but takes away from the other. And this is why we see the Ministry of Natural Resources and Tourism seem to be very powerful than any other ministry. We have Ministry of Land, we have any other ministry, but seems like the Ministry of Natural Resources are very strong. But it is just because of the misuse of the legal framework that we have, being it administrative or being it unfavorable by the current societies. So, against whom, of course, there are different stakeholders. We have investors. In Ngorongoro, for example, now, and we are just talking about Ngorongoro, but I'm talking about Tanzania entirely. When you go to the south, Ruaha, there are a lot of investments going on there, construction of the hotels. When you go to Ngorongoro, there are construction of 5-star hotels for tourist investments. When you go to Kilimanjaro Airport, nearby Arusha, there are a lot of investments going on. So these investments that do not really cater for the interests of the communities found on the ground by itself become problematic. And this is why we are struggling to secure this land, at least to have a certificate that delays the process of violation. Because it is just a delaying techniques. Because if you take an example of Loliondo, during the establishment of Polalit, there were villages that own certificate for village lands, but still they have been moved away and Polalit is being introduced. So it is just a delaying techniques because of the poor legal frameworks that we're having. Does not really give a full ownership of land, but rather we are like tenants. We are leasing. And that's why we have a number of years, 33 years, 99 years. But at the end of the day, the lease title ends. So we are trying to secure it from these other stakeholders. But another thing is that, yes, there is a confusion of reporting data, especially on the size of the protected lands. Others are saying 70% or 78% are village lands. But others are saying 50% is the village land. See? But when you talk about the 70% of the village land, in the same land you find WMA. In the same land you find game control area. In the same land you find forest protection, right? On the same land, you find carbon-related project. So why is that land? That it is obvious that the land is getting minimized every day. And that's why we are struggling to see what projects are really favorable to the community lands. We have carbon coming up while we are still fighting for the wildlife conservation, which has been brought to us with a different perspective that conservation is only for wildlife, which is not the truth. Conservation is yourself, because reading from your forefathers is conservation. You are conserving their mind, right? Living the way, taking livestock all around, that is conservation. You are leaving one part of the land to bear for the next use. Introducing knowledge to others is conservation. So conservation does not really necessarily mean wildlife. If you take an example of the Wildlife Conservation Act, Masalo, and the Animal Grazing Act of 2010, in the animal grazing land does not allow any kind of the wildlife or conservation projects to be done in the land. But you find wildlife are being protected within the grazing lands, which is being secured, for example, by UCRT. See? So there's this kind of confusion, and that's why I'm saying that the Department of Wildlife and Natural Resources seems to be very powerful than any other. But again, it restricts the use of human activities within the protected areas. But when you come to the village land, we have these people called the TAWA, Tanzania Wildlife Authorities. They're securing wildlife. Why not our livestock? Why not our goats? Why not our sheep? You know? Why only wildlife? So there is this sense of misinterpreting the concepts that we are receiving from our thanks. Another question, I think it's mostly.
Thank you. Masalu, your question was security of tenure, is it enough or not enough? I can say it is not enough. It does not guarantee the security of community land. And just to agree or to support what Merubo has said, if we are not there, I think we could not have even a piece of our land there. So better we are there, at least to delay tactics, as I thought he said. Because the nature of our life itself, even without security of tenure, we could also put ourselves in conservation approach, because we don't destroy environment, we just build simple houses. You cannot differentiate Maasai in the bush from the environment itself. Everything is very simple. So it is very easy for somebody to say, this land is vacant, it can be taken away. So being not constructing these modern houses and without even tenure security, we are limit, like we put ourselves in a problem. So we isn't the conservation to pick up the community land, but at least we are there, we are trying. But the good thing is also the government, on the other hand, support the tenure security. They are keeping issuing the certificates, and we are even going further to request for the gazettement of those grazing areas, hoping that at least by continuing putting or adding layers of security, at least it gives us a chance to continue defending in a small piece of land that we have. For example, when this presidential commission was delivering a report around the Ngorongoro and the other area of the Maasai, I think because of some of the places already received the GM, government gazettement, at least there was a room to ask for the president at least revoke it so that we can make a conservation area. So we hope the government will only take the places of their interests. But at least that layer is a delaying tactic. But it is, I cannot say it is enough. It's not a pure
It's so
security.
painful to say.
But again, connecting to that,
We are telling them
quality
delaying.
of the governance also can at least secure the tenure. It can also guarantee at least, rather than this certificate. The other question, which I agree and take Masal, you told me now is 50%. The only village land is 50%. I didn't know. So thank you for informing. We'll update ourselves because the information I have, I think, is of the past, not of the current. There's somebody, I forgot the name, he asked about the Ujamaa model, whether it has a link with the community or we borrowed somewhere. Surely Ujamaa is a good name because it was originated from Nyerere himself, and we used to believe that president very much, was our leader. And I think the meaning, the point of UCRT about Ujamaa is relating very much on the lifestyle of this community that we serve. Everything is owned communally, managed communally, shared communally. So we thought like Ujamaa has a direct relationship with the life of the people. But again, we admit we can rethink about it. If there is somewhere that does not relate to the real life of the community, I think we can reshape it to suit the community we are serving. About there is a sister who appreciated the approach that we do, but she challenged to whom this tenure security we are securing to. It's a challenge. We already been challenged even at the ground there by other NGOs and even by the community themselves. It's sure when because this is the kind of conservation we do. If you secure land, we ask community to manage it properly. It ends up being healthy, ecosystem being healthy, and then it attracts these investors. It attracts a lot. So the challenge we have been encountering at the ground, okay, so the plan of UCRT to conduct land use planning at our villages is to keep our land so that the government can come and take it easily. That's already a question existing at the ground.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's just a perfect question which is also challenging us, but at least our moral focus was to secure the community land. We didn't meant to secure it for other people, but it ended up attracting tourists, attracting investors, attracting carbon, whatever. So it is also making us to rethink. The other thing is, okay, the question of Dr. Noe, how land use planning becoming a tool for conservation. I think
it's the same, yeah.
I answered along the way.
Yeah,
That one,
yeah.
The last question was about how UCRT navigated all challenges from the government and other people who are against what we are doing at the ground. Very difficult. What we did, we are staying behind the communities. We don't put ourselves at the front. When the things come hot, we ask the community themselves, the land is yours, and if I'm working for UCRT, if they come to my village and challenge, I throw away the name of UCRT, I become a villager because I'm a villager. Yes, I tell myself I'm a villager. I defend my land as a villager, not as a UCRT. That's the only way we can. Because we already received some threat of being deregistered many times. Many times we know we are the threat. But how can I just keep quiet while I know the risk is at front of me? So I go there, I become Saitoti, I become somebody else. I speak in the meeting like a villager. Thank you very much. If I forgot anything. Okay, there's something about invasive species. How UCRT is dealing with invasive species, which is becoming a huge problem on the rangelands. We just employ a very simple method, which is going back to a traditional system of resting the land. What we encourage people to do, for those areas which are not yet very much affected, you have to intensify management. Make sure that you don't cause bare ground or you don't put your livestock for so long time to extent of causing overgrazing. You really need to observe the calendars of grazing. If you say you plan to graze there for 30 days or 20 days, make sure that 2 days before you go back to the pastoralist assembly meeting, tell them we are going to exit the particular block before 2 days before, because they have those system now in place. But again, there was a question about how UCRT is using tourism as a tool, you know, to help or to empower the communities. We are trying. We are not. It is just an approach come not very. Just a few years ago, like we have like a year since we discovered that as an opportunity. And why we delayed? Because we were opposing everything about conservation. Conservation organization used to come to UCRT because they know we have a very good reputation to the communities, but we kept rejecting them. When they go away, they spoil our names. So now we became like alienated ourselves, or inferiority complex. We don't want to work closely with any conservation organization. And then I think sometimes it made us weak in the side of seeing other opportunities like tourism, but now we started at least on the side of EAC. That's why we took it as a good example of one of the projects we are doing, but we are keep learning. These tourism ideas in pastoralist areas, they don't like, because they say it is very much attached to conservation. But at least you see, we are doing it in EAC. Those people are not the Maasai. These are the Hadza. The people who are living keep shifting from one point to another and depending on nature 100%. But taking idea for tourism to communities, pastoral communities, you need really to sit and educate them more, because sometimes even we are even avoiding working closely with this conservation organization when we go to the village, because the moment they spot you with them, now you have been used to pick up our land. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, guys. I forgot that I'm the chair to watch the time. At some point, these discussions become very emotional, especially when you have to accept the fact that this is just delaying tactics, but we are on the way to getting out of the areas. This is not a very good thing to hear. And I understand that we have tea break. We are eating from the tea time. And I still see many people, putting hands up. And I can only allow 2 questions, very burning questions. I came from the back, so I'm sorry, I'm not coming back to the back. Can I please give Michael, now Joseph, you're tempting me so much. Okay, 3 quick questions.
Save your culture and identity, and I'm asking this because you say you once lived in Tangire, then you were evicted. So what do you do to adjust or to adapt to other areas where you went? Because you said in that wetland you could get medicine, water, the poor, which is service, boarding practice, etc. And given the contemporary issues of climate change, most of the Maasais have opted for migration. So you'll find Maasai in town now, right, border, others are marching guys, street vendors. And I'm afraid that maybe in the near future, that identity of Maasai might exist, extinct. So what are you doing as a Maasai to make sure that you conserve this culture?
Thank you, Michael. Joseph, please. Let us just wait for that.
Thank you very much, Chair. Mine is about reparations. We have been talking about reparations for victims from times of colonialism to present. Now, you have said 80% of your land has been taken. People have been moved, thrown out from Ngorongoro to other areas.
Investments are going on in terms of hotels, large farms, and so on. So what type of reparation are you talking about? Are you talking about being brought back or being compensated in terms of funds? So what are you talking about? Thank you.
And do you see that as a possibility? Because I also heard that. You actually see that there's a possibility? Thank you, Joseph.
So thank you once again. Well, I know something small about the master. One is a coordinator, travels, the other one is an observer. So I must admit that I come from a 10th generation from one of the lords who bought the entire lands that the Kikuyu live in. I identify as a Kikuyu, and over the years, the Kikuyus settled in the Central Highlands, bought those entire lands, and assimilated those other indigenous people that were living there. And some of the tribes that were completely assimilated were the Gumbas, and then mostly the Robos, and the Kabiro. But then there were others that were partially assimilated, like the Avi and the Yahu, and you know the Yahunpe itself is around, has only about 300 speakers, and the entire tribe is likely to be extinct within our lifetimes. And also the Maasais were highly assimilated into Kikuyu lifestyles. And what happened after colonialism is that the Maasais were split.
Can I go to the question, please?
Yeah.
The comment?
Yeah, the comment. So today what is happening in Kenya, especially among the Kisongo and the Military, is that those lands, they have title deeds, and the lands were given to the local people. And so what is happening is that you find an entire conservancy of maybe 50,000 acres that the community can access, but their title deeds have been consolidated into one land, and this land is rented out to one family from London or from Germany, and they are living in that land, owning it, controlling tourism and all the resources in the name of conservation. And these similar things are happening in Tanzania, from what you described. So my question is, to what point are these kind of arrangements voluntary? Yeah, or are we like perpetuating neo-colonialism by kind of those arrangements of land ownership and control?
Thank you very much. So very quick answers, and then this discussion can continue as we have breaks and even after.
Asante sana. I will try to be short. In the course of our meetings, we can just discuss further. What do you think, and what do you do to preserve culture? Yeah. Actually, we believe that there is no any culture which is static. It must change. However, it is gradual change. It is not something that takes its souls abruptly. What we do normally in Maasai community with those guys coming out of the community, we have different structures within our traditional system that deals with particular beneficiaries. The young men have got their own structure, women, and the grandparent. And each institution reports back to what's happening. Young men, a Moran, has their own leader who oversee daily lifestyle of that particular group. But the elderly are there also to make further advices on how culture should be done. But another thing is that we have different cultural related ceremonies that is also contributing to the living knowledge, surviving, and how you keep on with your culture. Orpul is one of them. It's a place where you can service yourself, but a merely reason to have it is a school of knowledge. You get to know traditional medicine. You get to know how culture run. You get to know how to slaughter a cow. You get to know what important pieces of meat can be distributed to the age groups. So itself, it's a school, not only a meat camp. So we have also those structure. But another thing is forums. There are different forums within the community which are not documented. That when you get back, when you go to the your age group, you always meet and discuss how issues are going and how they run. Of course, you know traditional leaders system, it operates, and that is a general, it oversights how community should live in. Yes, we have the impacts related to climate change that are natural, unavoidable, but we have ways to mitigate. For example, if a if a guy engage himself to motor. Yeah. What we are seeking, one, is retaining our culture. But basically, is our ancestral land. Because without land, we are not living. There are only three pillars that brings pastoralism on board. One is people. You have to be a community member. You have to own land where you do all these traditional related practices. Yeah. And if you don't have, then you are not. Then you need to have cows or livestock. That actually brings in the practice into being. So we need to be repaid back the land that is being taken. And it is always taken by force anyway. There's no voluntariness. Voluntary is only done and only say for you guys out there, but there is no voluntary movement. However, that yes, there are some conditions that makes you to move. For example, I'm going to school, right? And then I have constructed my house in Arusha town. It is obvious that I will be moving. And that is driving for myself, from within, not really being imposed as a voluntary movement, as they do now. And is that possible? Yes, it is possible if we fight for it. And of course we have a problem with the political will. Yeah? We have been there for decades. It doesn't mean that the parks or the protected areas just started yesterday. They have started for some time. To what extent, yeah, I think I have a small question. Thank you.
You have any? Yeah,
Thank you.
I'm really thinking that we have to end here. Melubo, I've seen your hand, but can we take this discussion out now? But I know it is important. Okay.
1 minute.
Okay. I know Melubo's 1 minute, but please.
Hello. Okay. Thank you, Professor Mwalimu wangu. One, the people you see them aside in town, I possibly ask you guys to consider them as ecological refugees. Yeah. They have not gone there or been in town for their wish. It is because of what is happening with their land. Two, there's a gentleman by the name of Mahmoud Nangoli once said, poor Africans, you eat everybody's food, you dress their dresses, your name have changed to become their names, you embrace everything that comes from free. What is left of you to feel good about being African? Maasais have done their best to retain, and they are doing it. Unfortunately, they are losing land. And without land, no culture, no cattle, because a Maasai is defined by, or being Maasai means a person who has cattle. You know, without cattle, and particular cow, you cannot speak of being Maasai, true Maasais. So if you need us to retain, preserve, and remain true to our values, keep us alone in our natural environment. Our land is a space to practice and be us, Maasai. Thank you.
Oh, that was really important.
Very briefly.
You
For the
would
first
burn
time.
if I did not give you a chance. Colleagues, thank you very much. I have just one thing that I want to mention. For us scholars, researchers, how do we connect to these narratives? They are not just narratives, these are real life stories. How do we research? How do we write about these things? And how can we connect meaningfully with these communities so that we can also engage with the policies and the legal frameworks that we have? How do we take the issue of just delaying tactics, the survival environmentalism that Dr. Mkono is talking about is precisely saying that people are just there waiting to be pushed away. Let's think about this in relation to what we do as researchers, as African scholars. Thank you very much. I hope the discussion will go on. I have not heard from Mano, but I know there are lots to speak about. Time is not enough. So let's break for tea, and can I hear from somebody with a schedule after this session, please, Richard?
Yes, Prof. You're not a very good chair today.
I'm not.